computer. All right, let me find anybody who's not muted and mute them. It's like whack-a-mole, just going through and muting people. Is there like a setting that you just mute everybody? Yeah, we're gonna get the replays for sure.
Stefan, when you schedule it out,
You can have it so everyone starts on mute, right?
yeah, you totally
I
can.
know. I guess I had it that way in the past, but maybe Zoom it did a big update where I had to like go in and type in a pin and stuff like that. So I think it might have like changed or something, I guess. But whatever. All good. So I'm still admitting people, but I want to respect everyone's time here. Yeah, I hate Zoom. Well, I don't hate it, but it's definitely a pain in the butt sometimes. All right, cool. Well, I'll keep admitting people. And in the meantime, let's kind of get started. So first of all, welcome everybody. Super happy to have you all here with me. Thank you to each and every person on this call. You know, it means you made a donation to Make-A-Wish, which was really amazing. We raised over 49,000, basically right at that $50,000 mark, which is really incredible. And that's really cool. I was supposed to go to the Make-A-Wish Arizona office a bit later today to like tour and meet their CEO and other people like that. But I guess I had like a COVID exposure in the office. So we're going to reschedule it for the next week or the week after, because they were like, you can come and wear a mask if you want. I was like, no, I'm not going to wear a mask. Yeah, I know, but I'll be going in there soon. And, you know, my plan is to donate personally, at least a total of $100,000 to Make-A-Wish this year. You know, and you know, when I do that, in addition to you all, we'll give at least $150,000 to, you know, an organization that really, you know, benefits from it and does really good work. And it's cool. I've talked to a lot of other people who I
share with you actually.
Oh my God, I keep muting people. Hey, by the way, if you're coming in, please put yourself on mute. It's not auto set to put people on mute. So rather than me having to manually mute people, if you can all just mute yourself as you come in, that'd be great. But anyway, yeah, so really excited about that. And then obviously, you know, part of the deal and that the bribe was to get, you know, people to donate was to give you access to breakthrough ideas and the training that I created. So I shared this at the Copy Starter event in Tampa, and it was really well received. But this will be a very, you know, we're doing it over several weeks and we're going to be very in depth with it. So we're going to, like today, I'll go through the PowerPoint and it's going to be a kind of, if you were at the CA event, then you've seen some of this content, although we'll go slower and I'll answer questions and things like that. But then as we go through the following weeks, we're going to put it into action and application and do a lot of other stuff like that. And yeah, so basically, let's just jump right in and do it. I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint, go into presenter mode for it. Perfect. Am I able to make that hide without losing track of Zoom? Sorry, guys. I feel like I should have been a little more organized on this because I'm actually just going to do it up here like this maybe. It's going to go to full screen because if I do in presenter mode, and I'll share my screen in a second, then it's going to be hard to admit people. Does anyone want to help me out by being a co-host and letting people into Zoom for me?
I want to.
Will you do it, Nick? I'll be like 85 times more focused and being more succinct and not seeming distracted like I am right now. Will you be co-host for me, Nick?
I got it, dog.
No, okay, please. That'd be really helpful for me.
Right,
thank you. Nick Verge, everyone.
I'm ruling this Zoom with an iron fist. There will be no bullshit.
Nick is Zoom time. Yeah, and then just maybe if you hear anyone talking, just mute them too.
I'll kick them out too.
Well, at least mute them. Like that. And I'm let's say for next time here. Wow. Okay, let's see if I can go to a full screen without going presenter here. So let's see. So I don't want to. Fuck it, let's go to full screen. All right, so I'm gonna go to presenter mode and then I will pause to ask questions. In fact, Nick, if you see questions coming in, just like let me know, and then I will, especially if they are really relevant or urgent, and I'll stop to answer them. That way, that really helps too. Okay. Nick just became my co-host on this whole thing, so
sounds good.
So I got to pay him royalties.
All right, so I'm good.
This is the.
I'll let people in too.
Okay, perfect, man. Thank you. Okay, cool. So, right, breakthrough ideas, the revolutionary 5-step process for uncovering the hidden big ideas that your market is powerless to resist. That's my sexy title. And like I said, for people coming in, I'm going to go through the PowerPoint that I shared in Tampa during this first training. We will talk and answer questions, which I wasn't able to do when I did it from stage. In week 2 and 3, we're going to actually, week 2, I'll do it in practice live together. I'll assign you to do it. And then in week 3, we'll be doing it in real time together and working through helping you to specifically use this process to come up with an idea, whether it's for a sales letter, like a promo, it's for a new product line and innovation. Like really what's cool about this framework that you're going to see is that you can use this for...
Are you showing your screen, Stefan?
I should be, is it not? Maybe not. Jesus Christ.
I just saw that comment. Someone just sent that.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Now it's shared. Okay. Right. Got it. Okay. But now I'm going to make it go back to presenter mode here. God, I feel like I'm just like all over the place today. Terrible. Okay. And we can see the screen now, right? Yeah. Thumbs up.
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. So anyway, like I said, I mean, the cool thing about this is it's a framework you can literally use for like anything, right? You can use it for, I think if you want to write like an essay, if you want to find investments, I really think this framework is super powerful because it can be used to really, you'll see, but to really come up with cool ideas. And there's a really strong persuasion element that is, part of copy. So I talked about this being sort of part 1 before RMBC. I really think that is true. So, this is from that PowerPoint from Tampa, right? And this is my promise from the PowerPoint that we're going to be talking about big ideas, and I'll be giving you this framework for coming up with big ideas in 60 minutes or less, which I do believe, which is important. That time frame is really solid too, right? So let's talk first and foremost about what a big idea is. And again, this isn't just for big ideas from copy, but that's obviously a very important application, right? So David Ogilvy defines it like this. He says, a big idea is an idea that is instantly comprehended as important, exciting, and beneficial. It also leads to an inevitable conclusion, a conclusion that makes it easy to sell your product. I've actually thought about this more and more. And I think, I will give everyone access to the slide deck after the call today. I do actually think this is probably like the best definition. And it actually really fits with my framework. And it's important because I've heard so many people talk about big ideas and come up with ideas in general. And it's always really like vague and, sort of broad, and people can't really define what a big idea is. And there's like essays about it, but it's like, it's kind of like pornography where you know it when you see it. There's books, I don't know if the book I have is over there. It was a book about coming up with ideas that I was going to grab it and share it if I had it. But this shit like take a walk, like go for a walk, listen to music, like, there's like no good process for consistently coming up with like big ideas. And so I want to change that with this. I also want to move this thing, but apparently I can't. And give you guys more of an actual process, right? So some examples I shared from copyright. A lot of you have seen my Mike Tyson promo, right? Mike Tyson's confessional bombshell. I used to talk about ripping my opponent's heart out, but inside I've always felt like a fat, scared little kid. Here's how the champ finally reclaimed his manhood, all while dropping 83 pounds of retirement weight that had been piling onto his gut and leaving him sluggish, exhausted, and knocking at death's door. Right? That's like the big idea for this one. There's the one we did for Arthrazine, Luke, and I for the Beat Your Control. 5-second trick, rejuvenate stiff and sore joints. Seniors swear by this. And it talks about a river. This is the Versaska River in the Swiss Alps. As you can see, it's flowing with clear, fresh water. And if you know anything about joints, this is how our joints are supposed to look, with clear, cooling fluid rushing between the gaps that keeps them smooth and hydrated. Unfortunately, so many people's joints, especially as they get older, look more like this. So this is just another one. And here's one about hidden constipation. Now, again, this is not just about health. Like, these are just examples I put at the front of the presentation. One of America's most celebrated doctors reveals a bombshell discovery. Could hidden constipation be the real culprit behind our bloated, swollen stomachs? Plus a simple 20-second fix that can rapidly improve digestion, slim down our bellies, return bowel movements to regularity without detoxes, master cleanses, or turning your insides into a gurgling, swirling vortex of discomfort, right? Hidden constipation, not by the carnivore diet, Nick. Right, so questions are like, how did I come up with those big ideas? But more importantly, how can you do the same thing? How can you come up with powerful ideas no matter what you're selling or who you're selling it to? And that's sort of what we're focusing on. And so let's jump right in, okay? So first, let's kind of talk about the types of ideas that we're looking for. And the way I see it, and I've thought about this a lot, because I really think coming up with big ideas is my superpower. And then I've been with other really smart people, and I really feel like this is validated, and we'll go through it. But there's really kind of 3 phases of an idea as I see it, right? There's hidden ideas, emerging ideas, and known ideas. So if we look at known ideas, let's start on the right. There's sort of 2 parts to that. There's ideas that are full on dead. Like, everybody knows it. It's like no one is excited by this idea. It's boring or it's hard. People maybe they don't believe it works anymore. or, you know, that it's been disproven, or people have just abandoned it. So I have like weight loss examples at the bottom of this, right? So stuff like Atkins, low fat diets, calorie in, calorie out, cardio, like those are sort of like really known ideas. So if you're going to be trying to sell someone on weight loss, like it's not that it doesn't necessarily work every time. It's that nobody's excited about that as an idea, right? And then there's sort of another phase of known ideas where they're fatiguing, right? So they were previously really exciting ideas that were sort of emerging, and we'll get to that in a second, but now they're fatiguing, right? There's disenchantment, eye roll effect, things like that. So I would look at keto that way, where if you go back 2 years ago or 3 years ago, you know, like keto was this exciting thing. And like people were like, you know, the next big thing was keto, and all the magazines were about keto at the checkout of like Whole Foods or supermarkets or things like that, right? But now if you bring up keto, it's not like, there's still some people in America who are like, keto, what's that? But the vast majority of people are like, you know, yeah, I've heard of keto, and you know, it didn't really work for me. I got keto flu. I didn't feel like, by the way, guys, yes, I will be sending the slides afterwards. Okay. I've got DM'd by it right now too. Right. I got the keto flu. I had like whatever it is. So people are like, whatever. Meanwhile, like emerging ideas are ideas that are sort of starting to spread. They're getting momentum. They're catching fire. They're known in certain circles now. They're penetrating the mainstream. There may be conversations going on. There's backlash. There's apostles. There's debate. So from the diet perspective, like carnivore diet is kind of an example of that. I know we made a carnivore joke. Nick made a carnivore joke in the chat. But carnivore is like, for our circle of like, you know, really savvy internet marketers, or like, you know, health marketers, or people who are into biohacking, we know about carnivore, but there's still a lot of people who don't know about carnivore, but that's like changing, right? We're on the path to carnivore becoming a known idea, where it's sort of fatiguing. People are sort of like, oh yeah, carnivore. I remember that was a big thing, whatever it is, right? And then there are like hidden ideas, right? And hidden ideas is ideas that are not known to basically anyone but a few people. They're not really being discussed outside of very certain circles. And this is sort of what we're going to be focused on today, is these hidden ideas, but there's a little bit more to it. By the way, just to go back to this, like, let's talk about crypto, right? Bitcoin is over here, if like super known, not really exciting for most people. And even though Bitcoin, though only like 2% of people have crypto or something like that, but like as an idea, like Bitcoin, like is not really an exciting idea. Right, a fatiguing idea, frankly, could maybe be like, I don't know. I would say NFTs to me are somewhere between emerging and known. I think at this point, NFTs are kind of like right on the cusp of becoming like a fatiguing idea. Not that NFTs aren't like something where you can still make tons of money, or they're not like a great investment, or blah, 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 but they're just like not quite as exciting. To me, emerging would be more like play to earn gaming. Yeah, PDE, Ben just put in there, like DeFi, potentially like yield farming, staking, things like that would be like emerging. And then hidden might be, for example, play to earn like guilds. There's guilds that, you know, leverage all this stuff, but nobody really knows about guilds. They know about, you know, play to earn maybe, or DeFi, but they don't really know about a guild in the play to earn gaming space. Or it might be like some, you know, novel like staking mechanism that only a few hardcore crypto people know about, but everyone else is like, what the fuck is a novel staking mechanism, right? And so that's hidden over here. So is this kind of making sense so far, that these different phases of an idea? Yeah, blockchain real estate is probably somewhere in this realm here. But so this alone is actually very valuable to me, because you can sort of like evaluate and critique, like, and I'm going to give you actual tools for how you can critique this more and kind of figure out where an idea is on this cycle as we go. But basically, like, this is to be very interesting as far as you can like look at sort of like where ideas are. By the way, you don't need to raise your hand. Just put something in chat if you have a question. Ideally, type the question in chat, but if it's something where I need you to unmute yourself when we talk about, I'll totally will bring that up as well. But I'll pause for a minute. Everyone's
Hey,
making
Stefan?
sense? Yes.
Yeah, so let me lower my hand. This is Leanne.
Yeah, hey, Liam.
My question is, kind of confused about keto being a big idea or a real thing, meaning like it's a type of diet, like Atkins was a diet. And so I'm kind of, it's a little muddy for me. Like I get
Sure.
how hidden constipation is a big idea.
Right. So
I'm
these are
confused
not big
about where
ideas.
keto.
Cool.
Okay.
Sure. So these are not big ideas. These are just like ideas in general. You would build your big idea around keto, for example, right? So say if keto was like, I wouldn't do that because keto is over here. So my whole thesis, and on the next slide, I'll share right? Is that this is where we want to be hanging out and playing at. So I'll come back to this slide in a second. So basically I wouldn't, anything over here, I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in carnivore, keto, or Atkins, right? But, sorry, but as far as like, if you were doing keto, you still have to find a big idea around like that would make keto unique or whatever it is. I'm going to share how we go from sort of like a concept to an actual big idea as we go through the presentation.
Okay, cool. That's great. Thanks.
Cool.
I
Awesome.
think it's really cool also, Stefan, how like to take it old school and bring it to breakthrough advertising. Like we're calling this breakthrough ideas.
Yes.
On it. It's like, this is from left hidden to right known as 1 through 5 on market sophistication. So it's like first one, make whatever claim. Second one, make a better claim. Third one, create a mechanism. Fourth, make a better mechanism. Fifth, bring it back to the prospect. Like that's how you work with those different ones. I was thinking that while you were doing this, I was like, it's actually a really good way to stack on top of the 5th level of market sophistication, the ideas that come with it too. It's really good.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, 100%. It's funny when I was kind of writing all this out, I actually took that. I had like the sort of the 5 phases from breakthrough advertising. I ended up not putting them into this PowerPoint, but I definitely thought how there was a parallel. And then I know someone else mentioned how this reminds them of the product lifecycle bell curve. I do have that, Danielle, later on in this presentation. So it's actually very similar. So, okay, look, right now, I don't want you guys to be thinking too much about the big idea. Like, don't worry about that. We're just talking about like ideas in general that people are excited about, things that enter the market and enter the popular conversation. That's really what we're focused on here. We're not focused on like none of these are big ideas, right? Big ideas come later. Right now, we're not focused on big ideas. We're focused on like, what are things that are becoming hot, trendy that people are talking about? So, my thesis, right, is that what we're really looking for, Andrew, this is what literally the whole presentation is going to teach you this. This is like, you guys, like, I'm getting like, this is like a multi-thing PowerPoint. So like, we're going to get to like how we get to the big ideas, right? Like, what are the materials for big? Yeah. Like, what are the materials? Sorry, I thought you were asking that question, not rephrasing. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yes. Right. Okay. So what are we looking for? Like, we're looking for sort of like this sweet spot, which to me is like ideas that you think are primed to go from hidden to emerging, right? So they're going from like a hidden idea that nobody's really talking about to emerging idea, but they're not an emerging idea yet. We want ideas that are basically right about to make the leap from a hidden to emerging idea. And we're going to talk about what those look like and how we figure that out and how we manufacture it as marketers even as well, right? Like, so why, right? Question, why do we want to focus on, hidden ideas versus emerging or known ideas? Why do we want to find ideas that are primed to make that leap? And to me, the answer is actually pretty simple, which is that there are way more hidden ideas than there are emerging ideas or known ideas, right? Like known ideas are sort of like a list of, like, go back to weight loss, like calorie in, calorie out, low fat, keto, whatever it is, like emerging ideas, carnivore, intermittent fasting. It really, like, there's only like so many, but if you go to look at like studies on, sciencedaily.com about all of the ways that people maybe can lose weight or be burning fat or whatever, I can find 1,000 studies saying 1,000 different things are related to like losing weight, burning fat, gaining weight, all that kind of stuff, right? With crypto, I can go find 1,000 ways that crypto can be used to revolutionize, or blockchain can be used to revolutionize all these different industries and things of that nature. Whereas like, if you're like Bitcoin, there's only a few really main things. And then really that comes down to like attention span as well. And the sort of like popular zeitgeist, like we can only have our attention span can only hold a few things at a time. So, whether that is a, like a known idea or even an emerging idea, there's only a few trendy kind of ideas happening in any sort of niche or category at any given time. But as far as the potentiality goes, when it comes to like all these ideas that are not yet known, that have not yet emerged, there's like an endless pool of these ideas for us to play with. So does that make sense so far? And then the early adopter stuff, like I said, we're going to get to an entire kind of like I'm going to get into that really, really deeply in a little bit here.
I figured out, Stefan, by the way, also how to mute everyone upon entry, and
nice.
Everyone is unable to unmute themselves. So guys, if you want to say something or if you have a question, just drop it in the chat and say, I have a question, so we can stop at a point where maybe Stefan's not on like a train of thought that's going to, give us something big that we're going to deter him from. So let's just pop it in the chat if you have questions or whatever.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate you, man. Okay. Right. So like, yeah, basically I put it here, but emerging ideas and known ideas, there's very like finite data sets. There's only so many known ideas. We only see a few emerging ideas at any given time. Again, what becomes trendy, what becomes popular, like when keto becomes the new diet like phase, when it was an emerging idea, it's not like there could be like keto and maybe keto and intermittent fasting, but it wasn't like that and that plus like, this berry and this fruit and Garcinia. Garcinia was before keto, right? So Garcinia was this really popular thing, or raspberry ketones, or again at one point it was Atkins, or like, those ideas are like really known now. We're emerging ideas, but it was really just one or two dominant kind of emerging ideas for any category or niche at a time. And so like you just can't, which makes sense because you can't. As soon as you give people too many options, it overwhelms them or overloads them, right? Like that's like in copy or in life in general or sales or anything else. And it's the same thing here. And so, but again, there's potentiality is what we're looking at. We're playing with potentiality to start. And this is a long slide, right? But as I put, there are near infinite number of hidden ideas that have yet to be discovered or that are only known to a handful of individuals. And because they haven't even begun to penetrate the mainstream, there's also way less resistance to them, right? They're harder to refute or disprove, which is really important as well. I'll elaborate on that in a minute. And finally, hidden ideas are more exciting. People love feeling like they are on the cutting edge of innovation. And we're going to discuss more about that shortly too. But what I mean by like there's less resistance is like if I tell you about the carnivore diet, you're like, oh yeah, I remember hearing about that. But like then I have a friend who said it was all bullshit. Or I saw like a thing on the doctors and they said it's not good. Or I watched all these videos about it on YouTube or whatever it is, right? If I tell you about DeFi, if I tell you about like whatever the emerging idea is that's really popular right now, like inflation, whatever it is. Right. But if I tell you about something that's like really kind of obscure and has been hidden, but I'm going to have to make the case that this is worth paying attention to. And that's a big part of what we're going to be talking about is how do you make the case that this hidden idea is actually like the next thing that is the thing for everyone to jump onto. But when I do that, if there's like less videos if there's not videos on YouTube and there's not a bunch of articles about it, and there's not a bunch of blogs, like there's not a lot of stuff about it, then it's hard for somebody to like refute it and disprove it. And they're more likely to be open to it. So, and again, people do like feeling like they're on the cutting edge of stuff too. People like being kind of like not exactly innovators, but they like thinking they're innovators. And we're going to talk about that shortly. All right. So how do you find hidden ideas? And this is like a whole framework and we'll go through it and then I'm going to go through each phase and I'll show you an example in action of it. So there's a lot here and I understand. That's why we're doing more than like one. Like I'm going to teach a lot of this framework in the very first, session here today, but then the next couple sessions is to keep going through it and actually practice it and see it in action and all of that multiple times, because I think that's the way you'll most understand it, which is why we're doing a multi-week training. Okay, so, right, how do you find hidden ideas? There's really 7 parts to this. And again, I am going to provide the PowerPoint slides to everybody as well. I'll put them in a drive after the call today. Formulate, rephrase, search, modify, categorize, organize, and rank. I wish this was like a better acronym. I'm sure I could play with the words and make it a better acronym instead of just like FRS MCORE. That's what I got right now. Not exactly the most.
MCORE, first MCORE. Yeah.
Force MCORE. Everyone just remember Force MCORE. It's easy. But that is the parts there, right? Okay, so first of all, and this might seem really easy, but this is like, I literally was like, what do I do? I come up with like big ideas. Like Luke Mills, right, one of my copy proteges, is always like almost mad at me because he'll send up me a bunch of shit and I'll be like, and I'll come up with the idea like so fast for different promos or offers or whatever it is. And so I'm like, well, what is it I actually do? And this is like my actual process, right? So formulate the problem you're trying to solve, right? Because every idea is solving a problem. Like the idea of gravity came from the problem of not being able to mathematically explain why we don't just float off into space. Pretty much every idea is really to like solve a problem of some sort. Maybe there's a few exceptions, but the vast majority of them are solving a problem. So start in very broad terms when we're trying to formulate the problem we're trying to solve, right? So here's examples, right? The problem I'm trying to solve is type 2 diabetes, millennials being broke, seniors not having enough money for retirement, busy professionals failing to find love, problem drinking, self-sabotage, can't hit a driver straight, right? These are just examples of like, depending what niche you're in or what kind of like you're looking into, right? Just really a very simple formulation of like, the problem I'm trying to solve is this. Okay, then we're going to rephrase it, right? As a why question. This is actually very important. Like, why do people get type 2 diabetes? Why are so many millennials broke? Why do many seniors not have enough money for retirement? Why do some busy professionals fail to find love? Why do people have drinking problems? Why do people self-sabotage? Why can't I hit my driver straight? Right? Things like that. We're just rephrasing it as like a why question. All right, step 3, search for answers. And guess what? This is going to be really, really cutting edge right here. because we're looking Google. We're going to search Google, that question, Google News. NCBI is for like health, for studies and things like that. Also psychology though, not just health. A lot of other things. There's databases like Science Daily or places that are kind of collecting articles or sort of like meta publishers. Forums, podcasts are really good. YouTube, things of that nature. And again, we will look at some examples throughout the coming weeks of all these places. All right, number 4, which is really simple, but people have told me this is actually one of the most valuable things they've got, is adding simple modifiers to your search, which I do all the time. So like just adding like words in front of stuff, like, so surprising reason why so many millennials are broke, breakthrough behind why people are, can't hit their driver straight. Like just like words like this, right? New discovery behind why so many people have type 2 diabetes. New research showing why seniors are, struggling in retirement. New data showing why, like things like that. New finding, shocking, real reason, science behind, right? So just adding little modifiers to your searches will get you totally different results and sometimes get you really interesting stuff. Fernando, I saw your question. We'll come back to that later. If I don't remember, you can re-ask it, but I will come back to it. I have a good answer for it actually.
Stefan, would you rather have it where we just have a Q&A session and I can just keep track of everyone who asked questions in what order?
I think if it's something really relevant that I see, I do have the chat up. So if it's something really relevant I see that's like very specific to a slide, cool. I don't mind maybe answering it. And then if it's something like sort of broader, then we can do that at the end.
All right, perfect.
But really these modifiers, and even like Luke started doing it, it was a huge game changer for him. And you will see like really different results when you do this, right? So one note for steps 3 and 4. So step 3 was going back to that really quick, searching for answers, right? And then search 4 is modifying them. Right? Like when you find interesting answers to your searches, aka what could be potential like hidden ideas. And again, we're going to do an example in a minute. Don't be afraid to dig deeper, right? Write down your first notes and impressions. Ask if this idea you've uncovered could be related to other ideas and investigate it. Don't be afraid to ask why more times to kind of peel back layers of the onion. And again, I promise I will share more on that in a minute. All right, number 5, categorize. So then spend like 30 to 60 minutes listing out every answer you find for each one. Categorize it as a seemingly a hidden idea, as in like, oh, it's like I've never heard of it before. Not many people are talking about it. An emerging idea, oh, I've heard of this, or it seems like a lot of people are talking about it. Or a known idea, like, well, this is something I've definitely heard of, and I know everyone else has heard of it too. And we just organize it. Anything that appears to be like an emerging idea or a known idea, we're going to set it over to the side. We'll come back to them. And we're going to really focus on our hidden ideas only, and then we're going to rank them. And for the different ideas, and again, we'll show you an example. Literally the next slide, we start doing an example, or 2 slides from now. So I know it'll make more sense. I promise you, if it feels like there's a lot going on, you're being fire hosed, I promise it will start to come together more. So like, right, then you're going to rank those potential hidden ideas based on your gut reaction to how interesting or powerful they seem. Again, sweet spot is what we're looking for. We're looking for ideas that seem to occupy a sweet spot where they seem primed to make the leap from hidden to emerging, and we will talk about that.
That's a great question, actually, Stefan. That just
Lorraine's about conspiracy theories.
Yeah. I'm like, yeah, let's talk about conspiracy theories for a little bit.
I do know. I'm going to come back to that because I want to go through a specific example of this. So make that one, let's note that as something we'll come back to.
Perfect.
All right. So let's look at an example of like, the question of seniors not having enough money for retirement. And like, let's look at an actual example of using this framework, or this 7-step formula. All right. So formulate the problem you're trying to solve. Right. The problem I'm trying to solve is seniors not having enough money for retirement. That was step 1. Rephrase as a why question, right? Why do many seniors not have enough money for retirement? All right, let's search for answers. So I Googled, why do many seniors not have enough money for retirement? And I started finding some really interesting articles right away, right? Why it's hard for retirees to get by on Social Security benefits. I can't afford retirement is the main reason seniors continue to work. And I found several more. But the first result literally that I found was from CNBC. It said half of single seniors can't pay for the basics. Here's why Social Security is not enough. Now, it doesn't seem like on at the outset, like this is going to be leading to some amazing, breakthrough idea that we can then use in an entire financial promo, but ultimately it is. And you'll see that through this presentation here. So I found this article, right? New research shows that 50% of older adults who live alone and 23% of older couples do not have enough money to cover their basic financial needs. Elderly households struggle more in some areas of the country versus others, depending on the cost of living for their particular area. but there is no county in the US where the average cost of living and the average Social Security benefit are equal, which makes it harder for retirees to break even. So that part right there, but there is no county in the US where the average cost of living and the average Social Security benefit are equal, which makes it harder for retirees to break even. To me, that was kind of interesting. I made a note of it, right? Going back to what I said about like, actually I have it here, right? When you find something interesting, don't be afraid to dig deeper, write down your notes and your impressions. Ask if this could be related to other stuff, investigate further, peeling back the layers of the onion is asking why more time. So whatever reason, this just stood out to me. Okay, why? I don't know. I'm like, well, I made me think of like a seesaw. I'm like, all right, so Social Security versus cost of living aren't even, it's uneven. There's a seesaw. I thought about tipped scales and injustice, a lack of equilibrium, disparity. I kind of thought like, what are other examples of where things are disproportionate or out of balance? And again, the scales would be one, or there's maybe like on a plane, if too many people are on one side, not the other side. I started kind of thinking about metaphors, right? Doing all this kind of shit. So now I kept reading the article though, and get to this next part. Those individuals have incomes that are below a measure the researchers have developed called the Elder Index. The Elder Index measures the basic costs households face and how well they're able to meet those expenses. That includes food, housing, healthcare, transportation, and other necessities. It does not cover extras such as entertainment, vacations, or dining out. So I'm like, oh shit, the Elder Index, right? That's really interesting, which is why I have it highlighted here. Because I'm like, okay, and what does it do? It's an index that measures the basic cost of households face and how well they can meet those expenses. And I'm like, all right, Elder Index, that's a pretty interesting kind of phrase, saving that. Kept reading more. It says, the tally for the Elder Index varies based on an individual's or couple's situation. For those who no longer have to pay a mortgage on their home, the Elder Index is $21,012 annually for an individual and $31,800 for a couple. And then it keeps going through a few other sort of things, but says those estimates go up for those who rent, rising to $25,416 for singles and $36,204 for couples. And costs are even higher for those who are still paying off their mortgages, $32,064 for singles and $42,852 for couples. So to me, that continued to catch my attention because I'm like, okay, that's interesting. This Elder Indexing, I've never really heard of that before. And then the idea that basically for seniors, you think about, the American dream is home ownership, and people are so like, they were taught their whole life to like own a home. And yet really for seniors, the ones who have a mortgage, it makes sense, but still like the ones who are home owners, even though not really owners, the bank owns their home and they pay the bank to one day maybe own their home or at least get equity in their home, right? But the home owners, seniors are the ones who are actually like the most screwed with the highest living expenses. And we know that they're like struggling because there's like a disparity in the Elder Index, right? Yeah, Jenny said the old home ownership myth. Yeah, exactly. So to me, I'm like making notes. I'm like, all right, the Elder Index is an interesting concept. I haven't heard of this. Can we play with it? And like, what about the mortgage issue? And then I had a headline idea, so I write down, the great American home ownership myth that's crushing senior citizens, right? Jenny, you literally put the old home ownership myth, right? I'm like, yeah, is that an interesting headline? I don't know. Let me write it down. The great American home ownership myth that's crushing senior citizens. And I started asking myself questions. Could we do a whole promo around the idea that seniors are sold home ownership as the American dream, and now it's the American nightmare because their mortgages are one of the top factors keeping them from retiring? Like, could we have a financial promo around, how the coming crisis with our seniors isn't about Social Security, but about how they'll be losing their homes, right? Guys, for the Tyson promo, I'll talk about that at the end of today. Another person's asking about it. Like, focus on the framework. We'll come back to Tyson. Could we have a financial promo around how the coming crisis with our seniors isn't about Social Security, but how they'll be losing their homes? Right? What about something around how the next great housing crisis will start with evicted seniors? When I noticed more, I'm like, well, that's scary. We know for yourselves, but we can actually flip it and position it as an opportunity as well, right? By showing people how the companies that are going to solve the so-called senior housing crisis could yield you a huge windfall if you invest in them. In fact, making these investments today could even make sure you stay in your house in the decades to come. So like, oh wow, I kind of feel like I've got like the kernels of a promo now, right? This could be really interesting. So then what I did, I kept asking why. Like I said, the steps. I keep asking why. I go peel the onion back further. I'm like, so I'm gonna Google. I Googled the term senior housing crisis because I'm like, is this a big thing? Because if it's a big thing, if it's really known and everybody's talking about it, then that actually maybe isn't such a good idea. If all the seniors are sitting around talking about the senior housing crisis, not good. But I want some people to be talking about it. And again, we'll get to how you find that balance in a minute. So I Google it, right? And I do find like, okay, the looming crisis of affordable senior housing from Reonomy, the housing crisis that will hit home from Forbes. So this one's the Reonomy one right here from 2017. It says the lack of affordable housing for the growing senior population in the United States is on the verge of becoming a crisis. The country is not prepared to meet the housing needs of this aging group. Adults in the US aged 50 and over is expected to grow to 133 million by 2030, an increase of more than 70% since 2000, according to a study by Harvard. Right, okay, cool. Forbes talked about, again, the housing crisis that will hit home. It said, yeah, this all-important element of our lives remains at risk for a population most vulnerable in its absence, seniors, known as the silver tsunami, which, by the way, another really good name to make a note of. The number of Americans aged 65 or older is projected to surpass 72 million in 2030 and 83 million in 2050. The significant demographic trend places substantial pressure on a system already experiencing a shortage of senior housing, which supplements supportive services with residences. As our population ages, we face one of the greatest crises of our time, one seemingly lost among concerns over the pandemic and global warming, yet one nevertheless present and lurking. So I'm like, oh shit, right? By the way, seemingly lost is almost good. It's like, okay, people aren't focusing on this, and yet they should be, probably. That's what I'm getting from that article. New York Times, elderly and homeless, America's next housing crisis from 2020. American Bar Association from 2020 is a housing affordability crisis on the horizon for seniors. Minnesota Housing Partnership, aging and affordable housing, the growing crisis, talking more, some more data. Right, so to me, that's immediately a potential idea or a potential hint idea that I could use, right? Expensive mortgages are putting an unprecedented number of seniors at risk of losing their homes while creating a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. So you can invest in companies that are going to solve this crisis. You know, it's a huge financial opportunity. This is like my thesis. This is what I'm like, this could be a really good hidden idea. So, by the way, other results that came up as far as I looked at, like answering the question of sort of why are so many seniors struggling to retire and not having enough money to retire. There was other stuff like I'm supporting my family, I'm paying off debt, I don't have enough saved. I found stuff about employers having phased out pensions. I didn't take advantage of my IRAs or work-based 401ks, right? All of that kind of stuff. Okay, so again, let's pause for a moment and remember where we're at, right? So first we were formulating the problem we were trying to solve, which is seniors not having enough money to retire. Next, we were rephrasing as a why. Why did so many seniors, struggle with retirement or struggle having enough money to retire? Right. Number three, we started searching for answers. We Googled that question. Why do so many seniors have not enough money for retirement? And then we started to kind of go through and look at chase rabbit holes and make notes. And we found what could potentially be a hidden idea. We made a note of it, right? And then now we do that. We're going to modify. Let's add simple modifiers to our search. So surprising, breakthrough, new discovery, new research, new data, new finding, shocking, real reason, science behind, things of that nature, right? So I searched new data, seniors retirement. I didn't even really do the full question, but I did find some interesting additional things here. One from Pew Research talked about amid the pandemic, a rising share of older U.S. adults are now retired. But I went on to say that basically, it's unclear whether the pandemic-induced increase in retirement among older adults will be temporary or longer lasting. Newly published labor force projections from the Bureau of Labor Statistics suggest it will be temporary. They project large increases in labor force participation among older adults from 2020 to 2030, with nearly 40% of 65 to 69-year-olds being in the labor force by 2030, up from 33% in 2020. So I'm like, all right, that's kind of cool. That's another potential hidden idea, right? More seniors have retired because they got richer during the pandemic. And their assets increased, or another thing could be because they were like afraid to keep working and being exposed to COVID. But it might be temporary because with the recession or big economic event, they'll be dragged back into the workforce, which, by the way, I made this before, we're kind of entering a recession right now.
Good question in the chat right now. I think maybe to clarify, he says, are you partnering with a solutions provider, creating your own company with the solution, or just writing the copy for a solutions provider and this is your process? I think it's just taking the idea from whatever they're talking about. I'm not too sure. I just want to land that.
Yeah, that is a good question. So it can be anything with this process. So for example, if I was working for, Agora Financial or something like that, I could basically, I use this process and then bring them the idea and be like, hey, here's what I'm finding. Like there's a looming senior housing crisis. People aren't really talking about it. Yeah, it's estimated to be this huge issue in the next decade. But because of that, I think we can probably find some companies that are poised to solve it and that are maybe like really trading at like $1 to $5 right now. But like, if we did research, we could probably find some. And then with that, we could probably sell those as like, picks or part of like a, investment newsletter that, so then we would take it to like the guru at Agora and be like, hey, do you have an editor right at Agora, one of their financial experts who kind of like looks at it and says, yeah, I agree. And if so, then I could write the whole promo around it. Right now, at the same time, if I was like, hey, I'm trying to find an idea for a new business or a new investment, I could literally use the exact same process. That's what I go back to this being very like versatile, is like, you can use it for specific things, but at the same time, you can also, there's a lot of different ways you could use it.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you're starting with the client's offer and you already know what they're selling. And so you just need to go based off that and then like tie them in together. So if you started with some like debt relief service or whatever, and then it's like going down this rabbit hole for seniors or some sort of retirement service and then going down the rabbit hole with that. Because I mean, sometimes you have full control over the offer and the clients just like build it from scratch. Honestly, those are my least favorite projects, but
yeah, exactly. In this case, it would be like one that we could build it from scratch, or if they had come to me and been like, hey, we want to do something around like, well, really it's retirement, right? But it's like, okay, cool. Now, for example, the thing I did with Nick Faldo for golfing is like, why, hitting the driver further and like, like basically hitting another 20, 30 yards and straighter. So that was like, the product was going to be like, how to do that. We're still trying to find a big idea behind why people can't do that currently. Right. And so I have an example I can share for everyone later, but it's basically the exact same process.
Is everyone liking this? Like, is everyone picking up and understanding it? Like, just drop it in the chat. Give Stefan some love right now, because this has been awesome so far. I'm loving this. Even like Stefan, while you were saying it, what I started looking at, because I've been working on this dating offer that I got equity in. And I looked up, let me find the exact search that I put up. It was like, why are men not able to find a good girlfriend or something like that? And then I found this article, very, very liberal article, but a lot of what they were saying in here, one thing I liked is like outdated ideas. And they were saying how like a lot of guys have like an outdated idea of what a relationship was. And that made me instantly think about, that could actually be a really good ad angle with that, is have it like, are you dating like it's 1967? Because you really need to be dating like it's 2022, and creating that like, hey, you're actually out of touch. You could be 22 years old, or even like how a 24-year-old didn't even realize he was dating like it was 1965. Like getting like super specific like that, that creates that curiosity and that hook. So certainly dropper. Yeah.
100%. 100%.
Killer MC. Thanks guys. Yes.
You are a killer MC.
Love. Sick. All right. Let's keep going.
Okay, perfect. So that was the second potential hidden idea, right? And then here's another one that came up on page 1 when I modified the search to like, what was it I said again? It was like new data. Yeah. Right. The pandemic retirement surge increased retirement inequality. When we got retirement inequality, that's actually interesting too. If you're going for more of a liberal demographic, perhaps, or even maybe people who are like, just, feel like they're, also you have to be liberal because it make, the 1%, the big companies that control America, like even if you're very conservative, you don't like a lot of big businesses and feel like they're trying to screw you. So I'm like, that's cool. And I didn't like I share the excerpt of that one right now. Basically, the growing retirement wealth gap and how to make sure you're on the winning side. I'm like, that could be another idea, right? So now remember step 5 is categorizing them. So list out every answer you find and then categorize it as hidden, emerging, or no. So hidden ideas are expensive mortgages are putting an unprecedented number of seniors at risk of losing their homes while creating a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. Another hidden idea, COVID-19 accelerated seniors retiring, but it may be temporary and you could be at risk. And the third one would be COVID-19 created a growing retirement wealth gap. And here's how to make sure you're on the winning side, right? As far as emerging ideas go, well, people talking about continuing to support adult children for longer. It's keeping them in the workforce. This is kind of an emerging idea because I've heard more people talking about it, but it's not just that you're supporting your family, but it's specifically adult children who are moving back in home because of COVID and the Great Recession. And it's making, kind of boomers and seniors having to support them for longer. So that's, to me, like I've heard it in different podcasts. I've seen it around things of that nature. So it's not like not everybody's talking about that as a reason seniors can't retire, but it's definitely not an obscure idea. And then like known ideas, right? Well, phased out pensions, just not enough money or no money in IRAs or 401ks, supporting family in general, not enough money saved, things like that. Leanne added having a spouse in a nursing home. Yeah, totally. That I kind of put that as supporting family in general, but specifically, yeah, Leanne, like nursing home stuff, things like that can be very expensive and draining financially for people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond. All right, so now we're going to organize them, right? So set anything that appears to be an emerging idea or a known idea off to the side. We'll come back to these later, and let's rank them. And all we're doing is ranking them by our gut reaction to how interesting or powerful they seem. That's it. Nothing like fancy and scientific here yet. But in this case, I rank them this way. I personally think the order I kind of discovered them is the order that they're actually the most kind of interesting or powerful to me. So I'm gonna take a sip of water and then we'll continue on to part 2.
Good stuff.
Yeah, part 2. Okay, so all right, great. So I found these hidden ideas. I've got one I like, but how are we going to decide if this idea is really like a sweet spot idea? Remember, meaning that a sweet spot idea is one where it's primed to make the leap from hidden to emerging. This is really what if I wasn't calling this breakthrough ideas, I would call it sweet spot ideas, because this is really like the important thing, right? Like I like breakthrough ideas because of the homage, to breakthrough advertising, which I got Brian Kurtz's blessing to call this whole framework breakthrough advertising or breakthrough ideas.
Yeah, dude.
Breakthrough advertising.
Yeah, part 2. Yeah, you gotta pay respect to the OGs.
Yeah, exactly. But the sweet spot, that's what we want. So how do we figure that out? There's really just 2 criteria that I'm looking at: momentum and virality. So let's look at momentum first, right? For an idea to be worth us pursuing, I think it needs to either already have organic momentum or the right conditions need to be in place where you can manufacture the appearance of momentum. And I'm going to obviously show you examples of this, right? So what I'm saying though is that we want to be able to point to a handful of new studies or data points or articles that are coming out that support our hidden idea and use those as evidence that our idea has momentum. We want to be able to create the argument that people are already talking about this idea and that it's poised to emerge into the mainstream. We want to basically make the case. Like we want to be the hype man in a way, right? Like, look, this is about to be the next thing, because we'll talk about the psychology behind it. People want to get on to the next big thing, right? But just take that as is, because I don't want to steal my own thunder. But that's what we want, right? Because when a sweet spot idea has organic momentum, or we create organic momentum, you'll see at least one of 3 things, and we'll show examples of this in a minute, right? Kind of a cluster of related studies or papers all being published in kind of near succession that build upon or reference one another and that support the emergence of a new discovery. This seems very abstract, I understand, so I'll show you examples of what I mean right here, right? So say that it's like a thing about a new weight loss mechanism or a new kind of psychological phenomenon that's happening, right? And you find that, okay, there's some new studies published in 2019, a few new ones in 2020, a few new ones in 2021, and they're all sort of supporting the idea of that weight loss thing or that hidden thing. Now, note, it doesn't matter that there's more here than here, here, and here. It's just that there's like a cluster of these things being published sort of like year after year. So you can be like, all right, I can point to that as a marketer and be like, oh, look, there's this momentum happening. Some studies came out in 2019, and then another one came out in 2020, and then 4 new ones came out in 2020. Oh my God, the watershed is about to break open. This is already becoming the new hot topic, the thing of conversation, like, right? This already has momentum. That's sort of why this is important to me. And it's not like 100 studies and another 100 studies, because then it's like, if that many studies are coming out, people are probably talking about it. It's like, we want like a little cluster of things coming out that we can point to and be like, look at this. Oh my gosh, this is really starting to trend. This is going to, enter the mainstream. Like, we need to make the art. It often is true, but like as a marketer, and you're a marketer, you're a seller or purveyor of ideas, right? Marketer doesn't have to mean even selling a product. But if you're selling an argument for anything, like anyone who makes a statement about crypto or makes a statement about relationships or geopolitics or inflation or Russia or Ukraine, right? You're basically selling an idea to somebody else, right? All the time, that's what we're doing. And so this is like our evidence, our ammo in order to be able to sell the idea successfully, right? So another way you can look at this is clusters of data being published that appear to confirm the emergence of a new truth about the world. Again, very abstract. Like public opinion polls would be a great example. And it's funny because Nick just wrote Edward Bernays, and he talked about kind of like public opinion and public, things like that in addition to propaganda, right? But maybe there's some new public opinion polls published in 2019 in Pew about how, dating has changed and how Gen Z views dating differently than millennials did, who view it differently than, Gen X did. And then we see that new polls in 2020 show, oh, wow, no, Gen Z is really looking at this differently. They're all viewing it in this way. And then 2021, we're like, oh man, look, like, yeah, there's just been all this research and data now. It's showing that Gen Z views this totally differently. You know, so like you better pay attention because this is like the way dating is going to be for the next, you know, 5 or 10 or 20 years, right?
I mean, here's where it gets scary too, is when all the shit's bullshit and all the people who have they've bought out the research firms. So they're just pushing that, and we're not going to go into specifics there to upset anyone. But, you know, like when I say like study Edward Bernays, you start to see, you're like, whoa, like it makes you question everything. What's real and what's just public opinion being like crafted. And when you start to see that, it becomes a lot easier for you to do that as a marketer as well. How to craft a narrative where that exists.
Yeah, I think you really have to understand, again, going back to being like a seller of ideas, is like really, yeah, public opinion is mostly bullshit and it's mostly crafted. And that's not even like a malicious conspiratorial thing. That's the way it's been.
How dare you?
Forever, right? Like going back to, yeah, I'm reading this book about, I've read it before and reread it. It's called On Grand Strategy. I think I have it right here, right? But they're talking about like in ancient Greece and like Pericles and the golden age of the, you know, kind of Athens. And then also going into like with Rome and Octavian Caesar now and Cicero, who was a great orator. But literally all it is them getting together and then like trying to sway each other's opinions in different ways. And then the whole society acting as a result of like, you know, oratory from different people, whether we're talking about like, you know, in Athens or in like Rome with the Roman Senate or whatever it is. And like nothing's changed, right? There's still, it's constantly a battle for people's, you know, opinions. And so it's being manufactured regardless of what. So if you're, you know, hopefully using your powers for good, then if anything, like these are weapons that you can use, whether it's for political stuff. Like I'm meeting with the campaign manager of the Attorney General of Arizona later today, and then he's running for Senate. And then I'm meeting with his competitor who's also running for Senate's team on Friday, because I'm like, I can use this to help like influence like elections, but if I don't do it, someone else is going to influence the election. So I'm doing the way that I think.
You might as well.
Yeah, might as well.
Well,
right. So
like
I don't want to go ahead real quick, but I don't want to go. I don't want to go too deep.
But I was like thinking about this while you're saying this, and I was like, 1 to 5 people are going to listen to me on this and like actually do something with it, and then hit me up next week and be like, dude, I just closed a project for whatever. Like this is such a valuable way for you to get a client. Like if you're sitting on here and you're one of the copywriters that maybe like you don't have equity in the company, or you don't have a lot of clients, or you're just starting out, like the best principle is to always, when you're reaching out to clients, lead with the giving hand. If you hit someone up, hey, like I want to write emails for you, versus you hit someone up, hey, I actually did research recently on your niche, and I don't know if you've seen this or not, article. I actually went ahead and crafted a whole new lead for you based on this. I think it could really be effective for you. You're getting hired, the other person's not getting hired, because you just showed so much more like giving potential and understanding of the market. Like I would use this for outreach every single day of the week. Yeah. And you'll get hired for way more shit because you look better than everyone else. Like most people just hit everyone up like, yeah, just give me emails. That's
a really good point, Nick. So I'm glad you made it. And yeah, and people are like, it's hard to find people who can come up with really good ideas. So if a freelancer doesn't just hit you up with like, hey, I'm a good writer, but like, here's a crazy idea I had, but like, it's like not crazy in a bad way, but like a crazy good idea. That's going to really excite somebody. Like, don't people hire you just for your ideas, even if like you can't, like if your writing is not really there, they're like, whatever, I don't know about that. I've done this before with somebody, he like was in, I don't know, like somewhere like Nigeria or fucking Ethiopia or something. I've done multiple people from Nigeria and Ethiopia, but like this dude was like, his copy wasn't there, but his ideas kept being really good. And I'm like, fuck it, I'm just gonna pay you $1,000 every time you give me a really good idea. And I gave him like, he started to send me ideas. And it was like, you know, great. I didn't even care about the copy. The ideas were like, I'm like, damn, this guy's really smart at coming up with ideas. So, okay. The last one, right? So we had, just to recap, since we took a long departure there, like studies or papers, public opinion type stuff, right? Data sets. And then the other one just be like blogs, articles, news stories, right? Suggesting like kind of like the emergence of a cultural moment, a pattern shift or trend, right? So maybe there's like 2 new mainstream news articles published in 2019 about how like, people are turning on the Royals or something. And then 5 published in 2020 and 4 here, but they're all talking about how, whatever, I mean, I'm just making this up as I go, like, how the Royals are, there's a huge backlash starting to swell and people like are gonna, end like the monarchy in the UK or whatever. I don't know. But like basically like whatever it is you're seeing, like you start seeing more and more things published. I mean, like right now, the Great Resignation or, whatever it is, there's stuff being published, like kind of like ongoing. And you're like, okay, cool. So then we're taking this to a framework of our hint ideas. Remember, let me anchor that back, right? We found our 3 hint ideas. We kind of ranked them. And now we're kind of like, all right, we want to see if it has momentum so we can make that argument of, hey, this is catching fire. You better get on board, right? I just made this just because I'm a nerd. It doesn't like not even like that cool. I just want to feel like I'm a cool data person, even though I'm not even that data, right? So like maybe like for you've got like studies coming out, data, because it's not just one or the other necessarily, right? It could be a variety of things coming out, but just clusters, right? So I said clusters. So visually, here's what I'm talking about with clusters. And again, I know small cluster to me is very important when I use that, because like I don't want dozens of studies or articles or data sets. I want a few credible ones, because again, I want to find ideas that are like unknown, right? That if I ask 10 random people in the street if they've heard of this idea, then like 8 out of 10 would say no. Maybe even 10 out of 10 kind of lay people or average person would say, no, I haven't heard of this idea before. That doesn't mean it wouldn't resonate. So going back to the senior like housing crisis, you'd probably say, well, no, I haven't heard that there's like a looming senior housing crisis, but it makes sense because I know for my mom, she's getting up there and she's having trouble paying her mortgage. And, I've actually worried about what would happen. So, it's good if they intuitively get it and it makes sense. And we're gonna talk about that, the virality component. That's fine, but they're not like, oh yeah, I've been reading all these articles about the senior housing crisis. It's a big thing. It's right on my radar. If a bunch of people said that, you'd be like, that's not good, right? We don't want that. We want people to like not to make sense, but them not to have heard of it really. So that's why we want kind of a small cluster, enough to point at it and be like, we can prove that this is a thing that has merit and has momentum, but not somebody that like we're like, yeah, everyone knows about this. So going back to our example of seniors not having enough money for retirement. Right, the hidden idea, expensive mortgages are putting an unprecedented number of seniors at risk of losing their homes while creating a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. Right, so does it have organic momentum? Well, there was that CNBC article from 2020, a Reonomy article from 2017, Forbes article from 2021, New York Times article from 2020, the American Bar Association article also from 2020, the housing, whatever it was, thing. And then, some of them reference to Harvard studies. So if you go to Harvard, they've got this whole thing from 2017 of cost burdens among older adults are at an all-time high. If I want to dig deeper, I'm sure I could find more data from 2020, 2021, and 2022 further proving that. But you've got like, a study from Harvard. So it's like not just articles, but like, data from Harvard, which is always a really solid thing to have, right? So does it have organic momentum? And, the answer is yes, right? Like it appears to have the right amount of hidden momentum, right? Because things are happening and people, institutions, and the media are already talking about it a little bit, but it's not something that's all over the news or on the forefront of the average person's mind. It's not a major part of the national conversation yet. It feels like the first embers or sparks are in place, and that with the right kindling, that the idea could catch fire. And that's really what we want. That is the idea I am looking for. So now to kind of verify this again, you can go search Google News for senior housing crisis, right? Because if we search Google for senior housing crisis, we found some articles. But Google News is going to give you more relevant, like more recent stuff, right? So I want to search, I searched it for a senior housing crisis, and most of what came up was unrelated stories about affordable housing in general or municipal bonds or things like that. And that's really good, right? So there's one right up here about investors who spotted opportunity in senior housing, may have a huge windfall. So, well, boom, perfect, because that is like, but it's from the Commercial Observer. It's not from like some really well-known like New York Times, but like, okay, cool. That kind of proves what our thesis is. But the next one is about state of Nevada making a historic allocation of tax-exempt bonds. This one's just about affordable housing issues in general. This is about the outlook for housing, malls, workspaces, and other real estate. So I went to Google News. It's not like there's a bunch of new news articles coming out about this, which is good. I don't want a bunch of new news. I want to be able to point to data that has some recency and that's happening over years at the last, in 2017, 2019, 2020, 21, and 22. But just a few things I can point to. I don't want it all over the news because then to me, like that's, now I can't be the first to bring this exciting idea to people and I won't be able to capitalize as much from it. All right, I'm going to pause this a second, but I do this important note on momentum, right? It can seem kind of arbitrary, but again, our job is to convince the world, or at least our target market, that this idea is already making the leap from hidden to emerging. And we want to give our audience the opportunity to latch on to this idea as it takes off. So I'm going to go through this part and then we'll pause and we'll go to virality and we'll kind of tie it all together. And in subsequent weeks, we're going to go through and do more live examples and all kinds of other good stuff. But like maybe why do you need to convince your audience or target market that the idea you are presenting to them is already making the leap from hidden to emerging, right? And so we've kind of alluded to this already. but most people are followers and we want to sell to most people. So here's like the product adoption curve, which we kind of talked about previously, right? So a few people mentioned it in the chat. And there's other ways that there's other names for it. But basically this is a very classic curve. And there's like your innovators, your early adopters, your early majority, your late majority, and your laggard. So when any new idea or product or things like that like enter the marketplace, right? This is sort of like the curve of adoption. You've got your innovators, your early adopters, early majority, late majority, and the laggards. The laggard's a person who's like, I'm not so sure about social media. I mean, it's kind of an extreme one, but you know what I'm saying? Like, the laggards are like really? Like, you're not there yet, like Uber, I don't know about Uber. And you're like you're a laggard at that point, right? Realistically, like Bitcoin, it feels that way, but like if you actually think about it with Bitcoin, really, we're still probably in like the early adopter. Like, we're only 2% of people, right? So like really we're actually kind of like here coming into here. Now, which is why potentially there's so much more upside of things like that. Okay, but like again, right? So people like our followers, we want to sell to most people. We want to sell to the biggest sort of section of our niche or market. So here's the way I look at this, and I really think it's true, is that people think they want to be pioneers or innovators, right? But none of them actually want to risk an arrow in the back. Making sense, yeah? So in product adoption curve parlance, most people really want to be early adopters or the early majority. Because it's socially risky to be a true innovator, right? What if you're wrong? What if you look foolish? What if others follow your lead and get hurt? Right? When you're a true innovator, there's a big risk of social capital. It's too great. If you're like the guy or gal who comes in and like is like really into like segways and is like, this is the future of like Steve Wozniak, if this is the future of transportation, and try to tell everyone to get a Segway, and you're going to your Segway and then they never catch on, and then people are like, remember when you were just driving around that stupid fucking Segway, and you're like, oh man, yeah, I feel so dumb, right? Not everybody, but a lot of people. We're self-conscious, we're social creatures, we worry about what others think of us, all of that kind of stuff, right? And so we may have our own personal beliefs, but as far as like broadcasting them or are really taking action, most people want to kind of wait, right? And so we want to basically like be like, oh, it's okay. This already has a lot of momentum. Like this is already this is already becoming an emerging idea. Like, look at this, it's already happening. So now you're not like, it's safe for you to jump onto this idea and carry it with you and bring it forward too, right? Versus like, no one's ever heard this idea before, but I want you to have it, right? That is scary for most people. Most people can't do anything with that, but being like, dude, like basically nobody's heard this idea, but it's starting to get a lot of momentum. Like Harvard talked about it, it's New York Times, Forbes, but like people aren't talking about it, which is crazy, but it's about to explode, right? The sort of like the framing of that idea when it's that one versus like nobody's heard of it. And like, that's why this is so important. Right. More reasons you want to create a picture of unstoppable momentum for your idea, right? People hate missing out. They don't want to look foolish or be irrelevant. So there's two sides to it. They don't want to look like an idiot by being too much of an early adopter, but they also don't want to miss out and have FOMO, like you've seen with crypto or other things like that. People are excited by new discoveries. There's a fundamental human curiosity component, right? And then people like looking smart too. They want to act like they're an innovator again, right? So they want to be able to share and tell others about a new discovery and take credit for being on the cutting edge. They want to. Everyone wants to look like an innovator. Everyone loves the idea of being a pioneer. Not many of you, if you go back in time, would actually get on the wagon and go out into like some like Indian territory with like, risking like smallpox and a broken axle and an arrow in your back, right? And that definitely was a little bit of an Oregon Trail reference there for those of you following along, right? But then once like the families aren't safe, they want to be like, I'm going. They go early on and look for the goal. Like nobody, this is really important from a human psychology component here. Thank you, Eric. Yeah. God, people just drowning in the river every time you try to ford a damn river.
Can you imagine that? Like, I was even thinking about this the other day with ships. Like, the first people to come up with a ship, everyone was like, "What is this spaceship in water?" Think about the Dutch figuring out the ship. Like, we can get this wood thing to float. It's great.
Totally, man. And Matt, this reminds me of something I learned at Agora: show people the new thing, but also show them that already has a history of success for others. Yeah, exactly, Matt. I mean, that's such a good way of phrasing what I'm talking about here, right? They can feel like they're on the cutting edge, but not feel like they're taking the risk of trying something new. Exactly. Yeah, your ox has died. I know. All right, cool. So the next part we're going to talk about is the virality component here. So I see people in the waiting room. I'm gonna throw them in. There you go. But let me pause. Okay, do we have, again, we're gonna take this all back together. And again, the reason we're doing multiple trainings is because I get this is a lot. This is the advantage of this versus when I did this as a talk. It was great, but I know a lot of people were like trying to process it all. And then it was like, all right, good luck, bye. But we're gonna be able to go through and actually, you'll get the slides, we'll practice it together. We'll do all this stuff. So you're gonna have a lot more of an opportunity to implement it. Is it still making sense to everybody? Is there any really burning question that is specific to what we've covered so far? Again, I know like the Mike Tyson questions you guys have, and I can totally get to that after I'm done with the rest of this. Anything though so far, like the kind of process or framework that's not seeming clear, or is everybody kind of following along and feeling good?
Yeah, just drop it in the chat if you guys have a question and I will unmute you on it. I was even thinking, Stefan, how like what you're saying, you could do the opposite of it and it's still just as effective. If you see an idea in the industry that is gaining a lot of momentum, just say why it's wrong. Like, so for me, like red pill ideology is huge in the dating industry now. It's gaining a lot of momentum. Well, here's why red pill doesn't work. Here's why it's actually flawed entirely. It's like, it's that contrasting statement. It's like, oh shit. It's like, I didn't know that. Someone asked,
what are your disqualifiers?
Yeah, what are your disqualifiers?
Yeah, I think if it's really, if I just see too much data, like too many news stories, too many studies, if I go to Google News and I see lots of stuff, really, if I see that it doesn't appear to be like a little cluster, but instead appears to be like, you know, a giant cluster of a ton of stuff, that's really a huge disqualifier for me. And then the other part is if it doesn't fit this next criteria that we're going to go into. So it's actually a really good segue into the virality component.
Do you look for futurism type things as a place to start?
I guess not. It would just depend on what I'm working on, right? So if not necessarily would be my answer. It would just sort of depend. If I'm working in crypto or, you know, kind of working with like a futurist or something, then yeah, but it doesn't need to be a futuristic type thing necessarily. Sometimes it's like it's an old idea that's been hidden or lost or forgotten as well.
Next one is Stefan, when it comes to writing supplement copy, I'm assuming that if you can't find studies to support your hidden idea / sweet spot, it's back to the drawing board, right? That's if you're writing white hat copy. If you're writing black hat copy, lie.
Yeah, no, yes, Tony. And I think usually by the time you find like there's just so many studies about so many things that like you generally, it has happened, but it's pretty rare. Usually you can start finding at least a couple of studies and things like that do support your sort of hidden sweet spot idea. But yeah, if you couldn't find anything to support it, then you'd probably need to go back to the drawing board on it. Did to point to a celebrity talking about the idea or an initial thought leader be more of the sweet spot? Good question, Marcus, on that. Yeah, I think you could do either. I think either could be good. Again, you don't want a ton of celebrities, but a handful of celebrities, a small little enclave, a secret little group is good. But either or, it would just really depend on your market, I think.
I actually saw someone talk about this the other week where they used Kathy Griffin as an example, and they were like, I just don't get why this isn't converting. I'm like your audience is like Kathy Griffin's super liberal. And I was like, your audience is old conservatives. Like, that's why. Just because they know her name doesn't mean that they agree with her and like her. So I think it's also a big part is the celebrity likable? Just because they're on there doesn't mean that they're actually, you know, a good person.
Michael said, you know, for a financial copy, the goal is to get people to invest in a public company. So how can a public company be classified as hidden? Well, I think there's a lot of ways of looking at that. First of all, it's not necessarily that the company is hidden, is that the idea, there's a hidden idea, right? In this case, housing crisis. So it's almost like this company has been sitting there in plain sight. You just never looked at them or realized how much value. The company's not hidden, the value that company has, their potential value is hidden to you because you didn't connect that, whoa, there's a huge senior housing crisis coming and this company is poised to solve it. So even though they're only like, you know, trading at a whatever it is, you know, multiple or this valuation, realistically, like if they actually do solve the problem, they could easily 5, 7, 10, 100x, whatever it is, right? So it's not that the company's hidden, it's that the value is hidden. And also there are companies and things that are hidden in plain sight, right? There's a lot of publicly traded companies that are maybe not even, they're on like, over-the-counter type stocks instead of like NASDAQ, or maybe they're just, you know, there's hidden can be relative too from an investor standpoint. But that's my answer there. And Leanne, what about going back in time? Yeah, Leanne, definitely, you know, old thing new again. Maybe it was hidden because it was forgotten. Yeah, Ben, that was funny what you said. So yeah,
No idea. No, I didn't know that at all. That's so funny, and that's actually so smart because that circles back to what we were talking about with Bernays. Is like you never know when who bought out what research firm, and just like, hey, can you do research on why this is true, and just do the what's the word observer effect, and just find evidence that this is true.
yeah, totally. It's a lot of it's bullshit, and sort of what do you do with that? But okay, sweet, good questions. So okay, we've talked about. Eric's coming in here. I'll come back to the compliance on investing stuff later. I'm not a good financial copywriter, so that's not, but I'm making note and I'll try and at least touch over that at the end here. Dan, sitting with yours, we'll talk about that at the end. Okay, so we talked about the framework, this sort of like those parts, and then now we're looking at like momentum, and now we're talking about virality, right? So right, in addition to being, supportive, this is a wordy way of saying this, but like a supportive of a narrative of momentum, right? Like, the idea you selected should also contain as many of the elements of virality as possible, and why, right? So we can point at it, like, hey, it's got momentum, it's moving, it's poised to go from hidden to emerging, it's in the sweet spot, and it's also like got a lot of like virality elements. Right? Why? We're wired for gossip. We love learning new concepts. We love to share. We love looking smart. I always talk about in Sapiens, they talk about how language may have sort of evolved so that humans could gossip. Because if you're in like a kind of, camp of hunter-gatherers, like 200 people, knowing like, hey, like him and her banging, that dude stole my food last week. Don't trust him. Don't leave him with like the kill on his own, or don't let him carry the harvest over by himself, or whatever it is, or like what we foraged and harvest, right? At that point, but like, basically gossiping was like where our brains were literally like wired for gossip, and like language maybe have even evolved for gossip, right? And we love to learn new concepts, we love to share, and we love looking smart. That's the vanity metric or component as well. Okay, so what are kind of the most important elements of virality that I've found as it relates to these sort of ideas in this framework? So easy to understand, it's intuitive, and you can grasp it, can be visual, like metaphor friendly. So going back to that the river one of like, this is the river, and just like, your joints are supposed to look like this with clear rushing fluid, but if they look like this, like a cracked, kind of dry creek bed or river bed, then, that's how your joints actually look if you're not, if you're over 55 and struggling with joints, right? It's very metaphor friendly, visual. Right, emotional, the idea is shocking, it's scary, it's exciting, people want to share it. So Mike Tyson, right? The idea that Mike Tyson, who seems like the scary badass dude, has actually always thought of himself as like a little fat kid, a scary little fat kid on the inside, is definitely emotional, right? Another would be curiosity inducing. So like hidden constipation, is it the real reason for your digestive issues? You're like very curious about that. You're curious about Mike Tyson again, like is he like what Mike Tyson looks at himself as like a scared little fat kid? You're curious about that one. Contrarian or paradigm shifting, again, Mike Tyson, it's just like he was you think of him as a badass, but then it's like he actually views himself as like a little bitch. I'm gonna say this because Mike Tyson's not on the call, but if you like want me to use the phrasing little bitch in reference to Mike Tyson.
Don't call me a little bit, Stefan. You don't get to call me a little bit.
Paradigm again, like hidden constipation is kind of the same thing. And then provable, right? Supporting data, social proof, mental tests, physical tests, things like that. So, can we prove that whatever we're sharing is actually is real and legit, right? So, through data, like for example, the stuff we saw with the senior housing kind of issue. So going back to that, right? Back to our example, seniors not having enough money for retirement. Hidden idea number one, expensive mortgages are putting an unprecedented number of seniors at risk of losing their homes while creating a once in a lifetime investment opportunity. Right. So how does that stand up with our virality checklist? Right. Is it easy to understand? Well, I think, yeah, it's easy to understand that seniors are at risk of losing their homes. There's a metaphor you can use of the scales tipping or lack of balance. Remember, I wrote that stuff down when I very first began, right? The disparity, inequality, things like that. You can sort of have an analogy to the previous housing crisis and collapse. People remember that. So, it's very easy to understand this idea from my perspective of, of that, expensive mortgages are putting an unprecedented number of seniors at risk of losing their homes while creating a once in a lifetime investment opportunity. What about emotional? Yeah, I think so, right? Is it shocking or scary or exciting? Like, well, yeah, it's kind of scary. Like, what if you or your loved one will lose their home, right? But it's also exciting there's an opportunity to cash in on the next big windfall. What if you could be the hero who saves your parents' home or your own home, or makes the right investment? So it's both scary and exciting. Curiosity inducing, right? Yeah, I think there's a curiosity about, okay, well, which companies can solve this crisis, and what does the opportunity to profit really look like, and how much can I really like profit from it, right? I think there's definitely a curiosity component to that as well. And then contrarian or paradigm shifting, yeah, because you've been, for one place, like instead of having you being at a place of fear about losing your home, they're getting you to a place of excitement about keeping your home while supporting a company or companies that are doing good, and you can make a potential windfall. So there's a shift there, because instead of fear, you're shifting to greed. And it's shifting contrarian because we're basically saying that the American dream is actually the American nightmare, and that mortgages are one of the number one things putting seniors at risk of never retiring. So paradigm shifting from like, hey, your house is actually a ticking time bomb. It's a shift from the belief from older generations of like a home equals security. Right now, that this got challenged in like 2008 to 2010. Like, if I was writing this promo, I wouldn't go so. You have to be careful about that, but it still does shift it to where they obviously believe home ownership is really important. Same way they believe college is really important, right? When I was with my mom in San Diego on Monday, she was just talking about how she thinks that every kid should go to college, right? And like today, and like my Eden better go to college and all that. And it was like myself and my wife Laura, and then my mom's fiance's daughter, who's in her 40s, late 30s, 40s, Courtney. We're all kind of trying to explain to my mom, like, college just really isn't that important anymore. Like, if you're gonna be a doctor or a lawyer, like, sure. And like, it's like, you could go, but like, really it's just not, you can learn. And my mom's like, well, you learn lots of stuff. Like, you'll be exposed to different ideas. I'm like, yeah, like from YouTube and like Reddit threads and like money Twitter and all the other things, like, but they have these different attitudes, right? It's about, you gotta think about who the market is. And the same thing with like home ownership is this really important sort of thing. They still do believe that. Yeah, thank you, Leanne, for letting me know that I'm on point. Right, proof, well, yeah, tons of proof, Harvard data, articles, studies, press, stuff like that, right? So how does it stand up to our virality checklist? Yeah, it stands up, right? So yes, has momentum, yes, it stands up. Now, if you're not sure if your idea is viral, really the simple thing I would do is go take it and explain it to 5 different people, not other copywriters or marketers, but friends and family, maybe a stranger at a bar. See how they react to it, right? Does it seem like they're responding in a way that is consistent with our viral checklist we're now discussing, right? Do they feel like excited about it? Do they feel like, oh my God, yeah, that makes perfect sense. Oh, in fact, I can see that because, I can relate because I have this, right? If they're just getting it really quickly and intuitively, and you can tell they're excited about it, or at least interested or curious or whatever, that they're sort of like, satisfying our viral checklist, that's a really good sign that our, idea is viral. Okay, so then let's go to part 4 of our 5-part framework. We're doing pretty good. We'll beat up this presentation around an hour and a half mark, and then I'll do questions for a little bit, which is kind of my goal. But so, okay, part 4 is deciding if you have a sweet spot idea. So if your top ranked hidden idea, appears to have a strong amount of momentum and virality, you can move forward with it, right? If it doesn't, or maybe you have several really exciting hidden ideas and you just can't decide which one is best, then I would just run your additional hidden ideas through the sort of momentum and virality test, and then choose the hidden idea that seems to have the most organic momentum and that checks off the most boxes when it comes to virality. Really, the more virality it has, the better. And there's never going to be the perfect, perfection is always the enemy. So you may be lucky where you have a spoil of riches and you've got 5 or 7 or 10 really like amazing hidden ideas. And like, how do I decide? Well, to me, it'd be like, which one really satisfies that virality checklist in the most cases, right? Assuming they all can be made a case for momentum for them. And then I would just pick the one that you're most excited to write about or talk about or do stuff about, because you can always test the other ones later. It's not like you have to just do that one. You can always come back and test other ideas after the fact. Again, reminder, right? I like repetition when I teach, because especially when you're teaching like a brand new concept, and that's a long presentation, you're fire-hosing people. So again, we really are looking for these sweet spot ideas, which is when you find ideas that are primed to make the leap from hidden to emerging. Right in here, beautiful sweet spot ideas, right? So, okay, finally, we have what we would call our kind of our sweet spot idea, our breakthrough idea, right? As far as the senior housing crisis, how do we make it even more compelling, right? How do we create a narrative of kind of unstoppable viral momentum, something that you can use as your big idea going forward, right? Going back to full circle of your sort of big idea. So a few things I would do. First of all, you can expand, write out your current sweet spot idea, and then make an argument for why it has momentum. And then 2 is synthesize. So strengthen the narrative around your sweet spot idea by leveraging the credibility of emerging or known ideas that are both related and unrelated to your hidden idea. Again, lots of stuff here. And then finalize, re-summarize as your big idea in a final simplified way. So I'll show you what I mean with our example we've been working with here, right? So example of seniors not having enough money for retirement. So again, the sweet spot idea we kind of came up with, and we validated it through the momentum and virality components, is that expensive mortgages are putting an unprecedented number of seniors at risk of losing their homes while creating a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. So let's expand on that, make an argument for it, right? So same thing I just said about expensive mortgages are putting an unprecedented number of seniors at risk of losing their homes while creating a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. Now I'm just gonna kind of add in, like, everyone from the AARP to Harvard is talking about it. More of the press is finally waking up to this crisis, and data shows that in the coming decade, it's only going to become worse, right? So really just adding in a little bit of stuff. I'm referencing the data. I'm just kind of like, basically saying how, hey, this idea is like valid, it's legit, it's happening, putting a little bit of copy into it, right? How about synthesizing? So, okay. Now I'm gonna take stuff from other hidden ideas and even emerging ideas and known ideas and sort of put it all into here, right? So expensive mortgages are putting an unprecedented number of seniors at risk of losing their homes while creating a once-in-a-lifetime investment opportunity. Everyone from the AARP to Harvard is talking about it. More of the press is finally waking up to this crisis, and data shows that in the coming decade, it's only going to become worse. This comes as seniors are already having a harder time retiring due to poor investing or financial planning, phased out pensions, increased needs to support adult children, not having enough money saved. All of these things are tipping what is called the elder index irreversibly to one side. Not only that, but while COVID accelerated retirement for some of the haves, those retirements may be temporary, as the Great Resignation and the Great Retirement are putting an unprecedented strain on our economy. And that's before you get to inflation. There's a ticking time bomb here, but also an unprecedented opportunity for investors, right? So now, like, really all I'm doing is taking stuff from, like, we go back to when we were looking at other hidden ideas, emerging ideas, known ideas, like, okay, well, poor investing, financial planning, phased out pensions, supporting adult children, not having enough money saved, the elder index, which we liked, COVID-19, and inequality right here, the Great Resignation, inflation we didn't even talk about, but we're basically throwing in all this other stuff that we know is like happening and emerging and known, because all of that now is actually lending more credibility and credence to our initial part, right? It's like all evidence, but people, here are our kind of main thesis here. They see that, okay, like everyone's talking about it, right? Oh, there's momentum, AARP, Harvard, all of that, the press. Then they're like, oh yeah, that's true. I know, people do have trouble with poor investing, financial planning, phased up pensions, all that kind of stuff. The elder index, what's that? This is really for curiosity. Like, oh yeah, COVID-19, I know where people are retired, inequality, all that makes sense. So you're basically leveraging all this other shit. It's also where I bring this to you, you're like, oh, it just feels very credible, right? It feels extremely credible. If this, you're like, oh, this person knows what the fuck they're talking about, which is like realistically, I just pulled all this together in like an hour, when I was making this presentation the first time. The presentation took like an hour to make. It's like literally just like taking my framework and I'm like, oh, I should probably use it. And then I started testing it with something, right? But now I have all of that, right? So now you're like, oh, wow, it's really, this is legit. And then finally, re-summarize as your big idea in a simple way. And then all I'm doing here is really putting on my copywriter hat and trying to re-summarize it here. So I just put like a headline idea for it, really. But from American dream to American nightmare, why geriatric mortgages may be about to put 30 million plus seniors out onto the street this decade, plus why investing in these 3 little known companies working to stop the crisis before it explodes could lead to unprecedented returns and ensure your sunset years are dripping with gold. Okay. And so really that's just the copywriting component of it, where we just sort of take what our big idea is, which is sort of I just like made up geriatric mortgages like on the spot, but I'm like, I like that. That's not the big idea to me. The big idea is really the copy here is just expressing the big idea, which is that essentially like, mortgages of the elderly in the senior housing crisis is going to put 30 plus million people onto the street this decade. All I'm doing now is putting into like a sexy copy format that I could, then write like my whole promo around. And then that, as I put in my PowerPoint is like, now you've got your big idea, which is that basically, the senior housing crisis and geriatric mortgages, which is just a nickname. It's, by the way, copy tip, use it all the time, is I just find like, little nicknames for things, and then it creates much more curiosity, right? But really what I was saying is why the senior housing crisis may be about, why a looming senior housing crisis may be about to put 30 million seniors out onto the street this decade, plus why investing in some companies I just picked 3 arbitrarily. It could be 2 or 4 or 1, whatever, could lead to great returns, right? That's really my big idea. This is just making it sexy. All right, let's pause here. and that's my, you guys probably know how to reach me at this point. Huge group hug for donating Make-A-Wish Foundation. Yeah, exactly. So let me go back through the one part I really want to go through again and summarize, and I'm going to go to questions here. Is that 7 steps again? So I know there's a lot. You'll get the PowerPoint, so I have the replay, all of that kind of stuff here. But let me go back to that. I'm going through here. So just as a reminder, right? For when once you kind of you go to search for your idea, right? Formulate, rephrase, search, modify, categorize, organize, and rank. You can watch the replay, go back through this. It's like see how magic trick worked. Tom said, I agree, right? You'll have the examples of what all this kind of stuff looks like here as far as formulation goes. The one big thing is with 3 and 4, right? That you're asking why, you're writing things down, you're taking notes, because you'll come back and use all that stuff later, and all of that kind of stuff there. Again, what we're looking for is a sweet spot idea and this momentum and virality. And yeah, so when you have the framework, I'll give you the PowerPoints, and then you'll have this recording as well. And then, like I said, in the following weeks, we'll do like a live example where I'll kind of walk you through this live so we can kind of do it together. And then I'll have you guys doing and gals doing an example as well. Deepak, I put in the email, the recording will be sent in about 24 hours. Probably just do it pretty much after this call, but within 24 hours, we'll send out the recording as well. Thank you, Jenny. I appreciate it. I'll probably just make a Google Drive and I'll put the recording and a PowerPoint both in there as well. Okay, so let's go back to some of the questions that maybe came up and that I didn't answer already.
I'll go grab some. I know
Thanks, Nick.
I remember the person's name and everything. Okay.
And if you don't try to, if you don't, if you have to go, obviously it's fine. You'll get the replay. I know people are. Yeah.
It was Fernando was the first one. And Fernando asked. Oh no, let's pull him up. Oh, can I search it? Can you search chat? No,
I think did he repost that one? Was that Fernando just reposted?
pop out. Let's do this.
He reposted, yeah. Like what problem is the Mike Tyson offer trying to solve? So I actually, all right, let me answer that one. Because I put this was actually in another of my talks. I made a note about it in like my split test talk, but it's worthwhile. So I'll share a PowerPoint on this real quick because I think it's worth doing.
You pull that up, I'll keep everyone entertained. Hey everyone, airport. So, what's up with
the deal?
Yeah, good old
What's the deal? Airport.
What's the deal? What's the deal?
Okay, so here's what's cool about the Mike Tyson one. So again, this was I had this realization after this presentation that made sense, right? So again, the original one was like Mike Tyson reveals for the first time, your muscles are dying and they're taking you with them. Every day you lose a little more strength, a little more speed, and a little more pride. Every ounce of muscle loss is replaced with a pound of fat or more, making you feel tired, weak, and soft. Right, and you have mine again, Mike Tyson, confessional bombshell. I used to talk about ripping my opponent's heart out, but inside I've always felt like a fat, scared little kid. Here's how the champ finally reclaimed his manhood, all dropping 83 pounds of retirement weight that had been piling onto his gut and leaving him sluggish, exhausted, and knocking at death's door. Beat like the control by like 36%. But like basically like kind of like the big idea feels like you think of Mike Tyson as a scary and intimidating guy, but he's actually always struggled with his weight and felt like a fat, scared little kid. But how do we get to that? And I think it comes back to asking the right question. So like the goal here was like, basically, okay, what was the goal? Well, it's a cell nutritional supplement that has amino acids and supports muscle growth and weight loss. Like, okay, yeah. But that actually kind of comes later, right? The secondary goal of the copy, and especially the lead, that was the secondary goal of the copy. But the primary goal, which was like the lead, was even more simple, was to get the prospect to engage with the copy and keep reading, right? Because your lead is just an advertisement for the rest of your sales letter. So when it came to generating a new big idea for the Tyson lead, the primary question, and I'm reading because I have this, it wasn't why should people buy this product, or what are the benefits of this product, or why are people fat, or why do people struggle to burn fat, or how do amino acids help people to burn fat and build muscles? What makes Mike Tyson the best spokesperson for this problem? Really, it was a little bit more of that one, but really the question was like, why should I listen to Mike Tyson when he talks about burning fat and building muscles, especially if I'm an out of shape 50-year-old man, right? That was sort of the question. Like, why should I listen to Mike Tyson? Because like he's Mike Tyson. He's like he was a boxing champion. He probably has freak genetics. He's probably like, he's got so much money. He's super rich. He can get the best, people in the world to help him. So like, why, like that's what we assume, like, oh, people will buy because it's Mike Tyson, but there's also a lot of skepticism that comes. So it's like, why should I listen to Mike Tyson about burning fat and building muscle when I think Mike Tyson's always been really like jacked and strong and muscular and all that kind of stuff, right? And then basically like, there's known ideas. Mike Tyson was a heavyweight champ. Mike Tyson has a screw loose. Mike Tyson got old. Mike Tyson is boxing again and seems to be in decent shape. Mike Tyson is more self-reflective today. Mike Tyson makes a lot of content these days and is famous. Like, cool. Yeah.
Tyson takes a lot of mushrooms now.
Yeah. Emerging ideas. Like, well, Mike Tyson got fat and lost weight. Most people know that. Some people don't. Not most people, but half people know that. But like, like the question is like, how did he lose the weight? Right. People might ask that question, but really like the question that's more interesting is, how did Mike Tyson feel when he got fat? And then you start looking for that answer. That's the hidden idea, which is if you read like his book and listen to podcast interviews and stuff like that, he basically ends up sharing Mike Tyson, he always secretly struggled with his weight and it's made him vulnerable, self-conscious, and ashamed. And so that immediately has momentum because I can point to some places where he's mentioned it, but it's not like he goes around talking about how he had a fat kid complex all the time, but it's there and it clearly has virality, right? And we got to it by being curious by asking the right question, which was again, like, first of all, like sort of like, what's the question we're trying to answer? Like, well, why should somebody listen to Mike Tyson, for this type of offer? And then in addition to that, it was sort of like, how did Mike Tyson feel when he got fat?
Yeah. The question that was after that I thought was really good, and this was from Lorraine. Lorraine asked like how conspiracy theories tie into that. I think it's a good topic to go on because a lot of it depends on the audience. Like for instance, I had a friend that I was out with a week ago. I brought up 9/11 and we were talking about conspiracy theories, and I had my theory about conspiracy theories, and she leaned across the table and said, do you actually believe that? Like, because I have a conspiracy around it. She's like, do you actually believe that? And went on this whole thing of why she doesn't believe it. So like, those are very split in that case. Like I'm not gonna say most people, but a lot of people are fairly divisive on that. That's stupid. That's tinfoil hat versus like everything's a conspiracy. There's like an in between. But I thought it was a really good question because that definitely is where I think a lot of people's research is going to end up on some topics is like, well, wait, maybe there's a conspiracy theory kind of going on there. Because I would speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it just depends on the market as well. Because if your market is like down with conspiracy theories, then like, sure, and you can present it as a conspiracy theory. If your market is not super down seeming with conspiracy theories, then I would be like, I would nod to that and be like, yeah, again, I'm not talking about 9/11, I'm talking about it's like other just shit in general, right? Like, in fact, some people kind of thought this was pretty fringe, but now like new research is showing like Wim Hof, right? Like the Wim Hof method, people just thought he was crazy. And now, in the last few years, all this research has come out, like essentially, putting your body into like submerging yourself in extreme colds and heats, has all these health benefits. So, you'd be like, no, Wim Hof is almost like emerging at this point. But the point is like, you're like, yeah, people used to think it was crazy, but then now suddenly the science is coming out from Harvard and this and that, or, now more people like government officials are going on record or more news stories are coming out. Right. So I think, it's like, I wouldn't purposely look for something really polarizing, divisive, and conspiratorial unless like that's what your market likes. Like Nick wrote something for Alex Jones. So it's like, sure, for Alex Jones, go nuts with conspiratorial
we went
stuff.
into every conspiracy theory there was on that letter.
Gay frogs and lizards and whatever, but
it's all globalists.
Exactly. But for a normal market, I wouldn't be like, because again, like you don't want to lose people. It's the same reason a lot of people with health stuff will try to like go into like fertilizers and like DDT and like things like that, and like plastics and like plastics inside of like that's causing you to be fat. And it's like not even really conspiracy. It's like fucking true, but like people just don't want to hear it. They're like, I don't want to hear that plastics and everything, and that's why my hormones are all screwed up. Like it basically never works. People always think like, oh yeah, that's gonna be it. But people have tried it, Aged Immoral, and like it just does not really work because the market does not really want to hear that deep of a conspiracy theory. A little bit of a cover up around keto and how like, the low fat diet is BS. Like, sure. Once you start going to like big corporations poisoning the water and the rain and plastics, like people just like tune out. It's like too depressing. And they're just like, yeah, like I'm not going to do it. So it really just comes down to like knowing your market, Yeah.
I like also on this next one, why should anyone listen to anyone? This kind of reminded me of something when we were doing research on this dating offer. I think a really key indicator when you've hit something that is very controversial is if you talk to your audience or your target audience and they get intensely triggered by what you're saying, start digging there, because that may be where there's some really, really good ideas. Like, so we have it where I'm going to keep it PG, but we have a dating offer. You can fill in the blanks on what that means.
But Nick means him and other people, not me. I just want to be clear.
No, Stefan's not involved at all with this. Let's just say me and other people. Okay. I'm coming in to clean this thing up because a lot of it is like this PUA, like, bang as many girls as you want. It's gross and it's very outdated. And I think that we need to make it a little bit more mature so we can get a better audience. That's what we've been doing. When I was interviewing the audience, one of the things that these guys, a lot of them have is this like, oh, I want to have a rotation. For you guys who aren't savvy in dating terms, that means I want to have multiple women I'm seeing and I want to have 3 or 5 of them. And I want them to like all just, I only see multiple women. They only see me. And so these guys would like have this whole argument of what they want. I want to have this from girls and I want them to only see me and no one else. And I started asking them very, very deep questions on the research. One of them actually started crying during one of the sessions. I have a tendency to do that. And I asked him, I said, okay, well, what happens when let's just depict the perfect girl. We made the perfect girl in his head, like, every single trait, everything you want. I said, what happens when she starts crying and saying, why don't you love me enough? And asking, why do you need to go to all these girls? Why am I not enough for you? Da, 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 da. And the guy was just, couldn't answer anything. And he realized like, you could see in his eyes, I think you can see this with a lot of people, them questioning their entire reality. That to me was a really good idea for the guys that we have who have already bought the program and who've already started seeing success and started seeing results. It's like, what happens? What's next? What's next? You're going to keep living this like pimp life movie and keep doing this thing, or are you eventually going to be a man and settle down? And it kind of made me realize this is a really good way to transition these guys, is put that argument in front of them that, are you that guy who can actually do that? Because only few guys are built for that really. Or are you someone who actually really deeply craves intimacy? So I think that's a really good thing, is when you interview your market, you can probably find a lot of really good, I'm going to use it. Breakthrough ideas there.
Thank you.
Find a lot
worth
of
it for the payoff of breakthrough ideas. Yeah. Thanks, man. Were there a few other questions before we wrap up here? I think I know there's a couple around. I answered like the Tyson ones. Olga, I'm jumping the line because she said, seems like the key to finding the big idea is what questions we ask, how to come up with such questions. I'd really start with the basic question. I'm not sure when you came on, but really, I would just ask the basic, why is it that, for example, like going back to Mike Tyson, right? Like I didn't use the specific process step by step for that offer because I hadn't like created it. It was what I did internally, but it's not just like, why like, how did I do this? Like, okay, if I was going to ask about I guess you'd have to think about like asking about both like the market in general, and then if you have like a spokesperson or something like that, like, and you wanted to tell a story about them, then trying to understand them. It's like I knew like Mike Tyson got fat already. So it's like, how much weight did Mike Tyson lose, right? So maybe it's not why, but how. But then be like, surprising story of Mike Tyson's weight loss, or surprising facts about Mike Tyson, or things like, I'd just be kind of Googling more shit like that, but probably around weight loss specifically. And then like, you may find it there that like it talks about it, or maybe you have to buy the book or whatever it is. But really probably comes back to modifying your core kind of questions, I would say. Dan had asked us, how do you figure out the big idea for a list of ingredients? It's hard to generalize like a greens product. I would typically, Dan, for that, I would still probably go back to like, okay, well, what do people want, right? The biggest problem people have with selling greens products is always that they try and do too much shit. They're trying to sell and solve too many problems. So you basically have to pick one primary kind of problem that you're solving with the product. So it's like energy, or sleep, or just like immune health, or whatever it is, right? And then if you see like energy, it's like, why do people, why do people have low energy, right? And then they'd be like, surprising reasons, like new data, new study about why people have low energy, blah, blah. And then you do that, you can generally find like some surprising stuff and even some science behind it. Like I mentioned on the PowerPoint, like Science Daily. So like, maybe like energy, things like that, right? You have to qualify it. So it's not just energy like a star. But basically as you go into like that, then like modifying it, like surprise reason well, and then I would generally go find ways to match that to the ingredients, because there's like a million ingredients in there. Then typically you'll find it. Or you could also go the other way with it, or say you've got was like asparagus or whatever the one is in most of the green sprouts. It could be like, why does asparagus help with energy? Why does, I would generally be picking like a more unique ingredient versus like, why does celery help? Because if you can't really make a promo around like celery, is a star thing, right? Like, why does whatever it is help with energy? Surprising data behind asparagus in that new study, asparagus and human energy, right? Things of that nature. And then basically just by doing it that way, you could find unique ideas. Because maybe asparagus is like a, kind of known, but there may be a surprising new reason why it works. And you can then write, your idea can be around that. And then maybe like go look and see, okay, do some of these other ingredients also have this surprising new enzyme that was found in asparagus? Oh, they do? Okay, perfect. Like, cool. Now we've got my whole thing here, right? So I'd probably approach it, you can approach it broadly, or you can approach it by, ingredient by ingredient, and then tie it into whatever the main benefit is, and then be searching using the modifiers and doing all that kind of stuff.
I have a good question for you, Stefan.
Yeah, one second. Let me answer Johnny's and I'll do yours.
Oh, show.
Johnny said, in the synthesized section, you mentioned something about unrelated information. How does the unrelated information factor into the sweet spot? Well, but I meant by unrelated was just like, it's like, I don't know, maybe unrelated was not the right word to use. Just like basically, well, it was all related. It was just maybe stuff that I either, in some cases, it was like emerging or known stuff. So like I'm bringing that back in. Or like in the case of like the Great Resignation is like related in that it's like we're talking about, because we're talking about seniors retiring and things like that. I just didn't really have it even in my research, but I'm like, well, I know that's kind of a hot topic. I might as well throw that in too, right? And then like that's really all I meant, more so than but yeah. Okay, cool. And then Dina's got a question. So Nick, I'll let you do yours and I'll do Dina's after that.
So my question to you, man, as Alvin L runs into the room right now.
Alvin Lim.
What would you rather have? Would you rather have an amazing product without really any good ideas fleshed out, or a so-so product with a really, really good idea fleshed out? Because this is kind of what, I guess the more I have gotten into writing and the more I've looked at my big home runs, like I've seen consistently, it always had to do with me just like writing for the best products. That's like, when I look at, I've generated like anywhere from like 17 to 20 mil for clients. I look at the majority of that, it's all from really fucking good products. So I'm interested in, what would you rather have? Good product or good idea?
I need a good product at this point in my career. I mean, early on in my career, I took like shitty products and had great ideas, and like, which is probably beneficial. And again, I was never like malicious about the products, but it was just like sort of, I felt more agnostic. I think, nowadays it's like, and really honestly, it does help. Like what I found over time is like, because when you have like a shitty product or even a mediocre product and you have a great idea, yes, that's important, right? And mediocre is, but if I'm selling the same generic BS supplement, I can find some cool, I can still find great ideas around it. But if it's got like some really unique ingredients that are like patented and trademarked with studies, and I can find the stories around them, and like, because just for a storytelling component alone, I'd rather have really good a good product. I mean, Leanne mentioned Dollar Shave Club, right, for a product. That's true, but it was a higher end razor than like the crappy disposable razor you'd get, but for the price of a crappy disposable razor, like compared to like the ones that were like plasticky and they cut me every time I tried to shave with them. So there's no right answer, but I'd rather have a good product. And then I still want to come up with an idea though. So for example, at the Agora event we did, Copy Accelerator and Agora, Porter Stansberry is doing this whole thing about how he wants someone to come move to Baltimore with him. And, you can make like, hundreds of millions of dollars in the next 5 years. He's going to build $1 billion company. And like, then they're like, yeah. And like, you don't even have to come up with ideas. Like Porter's going to, he's such a genius. He's going to give you these ideas. And then you just take them and like, you just write like the ideas we give you. And like, to me, like, I was sort of fantasizing about like, gosh, I quit everything and go like move to Baltimore and live in Porter Stansberry's barn and like
just lost me at Baltimore.
I know. Well, I jokingly I was like, hey Laura, what do you think? And she was like, no. I'm like, all right. But to me, the part that really would have pulled me away from that is like, I wouldn't be happy taking somebody else's ideas. For me, like something inside of me is like, I need to be, as part of the creative process, I need to be able to generate those ideas. So Dina said, I can see how this method of research would work in health or financial. What about for writing an offer for a course, something that might not have studies written for it? Or is there somewhere to for good psych studies for coaches? Yeah, Dina, I mean, what kind of course are you talking about? As an example, you can pop in the chat or unmute yourself or either one.
I can go and find Dina.
Yeah, she can pop in the chat too if she wants, but it doesn't matter, either one.
I can also, Dina, just let me know if it's easier to unmute you. I can do that as well.
a blogging course teaching people how to blog. Yeah. So, I mean, I think like I would still be like, okay, like I think it worked exactly the same way. Cause again, it doesn't have to be studies. And like the third thing I said was like news articles, things like that. Right. So like, you basically could just be like, you know, like new ways like people are making money from blogging, or like why do most blogs fail, or why do most bloggers fail, or like how much money do most bloggers make, or why do some bloggers make so much money and others don't, right? Questions like that. And then basically same thing, you'll find articles, you know, they may not all be from the New York Times, but I guarantee you Neil Patel is gonna have stuff on that, other like kind of SEO content marketing experts, like other ad, whatever it is. And so it's the exact same thing. You would go through and you'd find like that, well, there's actually like, whatever it is. It's like, I don't know, it could be like length would be sexy enough. Maybe there's sort of like, a blogging algorithm that people are using. People are all kind of like using the same structure. It's almost like an algorithm, and you're like, oh shit, there's my idea, right? Or maybe it's like that there's like 3 things like that these bloggers are doing that nobody else does. And so I think like really it's the same process. It doesn't need to be like an NCBI study shared. But I mean, if you had stuff from Social Media Examiner and Neil Patel and whatever else, like you would just use that stuff. So hopefully that makes sense. Were there any other final questions before we wrap up here?
I think this is pretty dang good call, man. I was talking with someone about this yesterday, the difference between how people get, because I've seen it like from top 90% to top 10% to top 5% to top 1%. Like the big thing that I've noticed, the leap from 10 to 5%, is everyone in 5% is fucking obsessed with marketing. And it has become like a part of their life where that's all they want to be a part of. And that's all they really want to consume. And the 10%, the guys who still do well, but it's like, they don't really care all that much. They're just like, I'm just here to make money. So I think that this stuff, I really like it, even though I'm not in supplements. There's a bunch of little things that you gave me today that I cannot wait to use for my industry and my niche. So I thought this was fantastic.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I really don't think it's something. I mean, I will do like, I use it for golf already. I mean, like, okay, well, I'll have everyone use it and I'll walk you through it in future calls where like everyone can do it for their own and we can sort of workshop stuff. But like, to me, like, this literally works. If I was going to come up with like a book, if I was going to put an essay about, how America is fucked or why America is not fucked, America is great, whatever. I could literally, you could use this for anything, any argument you want to make. You could use it for that. As far as Olga said, how's it going with ads? Yeah, I think you could find a bunch of like hidden ideas, emerging ideas that you could then take and apply to your ads as well. So yeah. All right. So yeah, so I'm gonna send out, I put a Google Drive with the if I do that, I feel like people are for sure gonna fucking share this with other people and it'll get leaked. But it's gonna get leaked anyway, everything I put out there.
Dude, everything you've made has been leaked. Like, but
I get like DM'd on Instagram, people trying to sell me my own course for like fucking $37.
That's my favorite when I get, you want buy Stefan Georgi course? I'm like, I actually know Stefan. I could call him right now. Honestly, I don't think I need to buy it.
Yeah, but I'll still do it. I'll put it out there. So I'll send you guys a Google Drive, and then you got the dates for next week. I'll send out the Zoom link for that. Maybe a different Zoom link, so pay attention to that because I'm not sure the way Zoom is, but I'll send out the link before next week's call, and we'll go from there. But I'm glad everyone so far. By the way, if you all liked it, one thing you can do is put something on Facebook and Justin 7 Talk Copy or your personal wall or whatever it is, being like, wow, that was a great call. Alan's so good at having people do that. Alan Solnich. Like, I should really be better at having people.
Yeah, he does that all the time, bro.
Constantly.
Can you post that in Nothing Held Back, bro? Just
Yeah.
I got you. You don't even worry.
Yeah, this was good. Go give it like a little post for me, a little love, say how great it was. That'd be really valuable for me. And we'll be back next week. We got a lot more to do, but feel free to watch replay. All right, thank you everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you again for donating to Make a Wish. It's so awesome that you did it, and looking forward to next week. Nick, thank you so much for coming in and being a kind of co-host. Just like answering the bat call. Really appreciate that.
Bro, I show up. That's how I do
it. You do. All right, awesome. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.